Hi, this video will be all about graphing inequalities. Some of the things I'll go over at the beginning you probably already know from Algebra 1. Some of the things after that you probably may not know. And then I'll do some examples. Okay, so let's start off with when do you fill in the circle? Now, if you remember from Algebra 1, if there's an equal sign underneath the inequality, then I fill in the circle. Okay, so I filled in the word example there. I fill in the circle over here, which means that x is less than and equal to 11. X is less than or equal to 11. So over here, x can be anything less than 11, or it can be 11. 11 is a good number. It satisfies this inequality. So if there's an equal sign, fill in the circle. If there's not an equal sign, like in this example, x is greater than -9, -9 does not work in the inequality, because it can't be equal to -9. So to show that, you put an open circle there. Anything greater than -9 does work. Okay, let's talk about something that you may not have seen before, and this is called a compound inequality. There are two different types of compound inequalities. There are ands and ors. Let's start with and first. Well, I can take this inequality, which is the actual solution. This is the way you're going to write your and inequalities. And you're going to make them into two separate inequalities. It has to meet both of them. X is greater than or equal to -4. That's this part right there. Now for this part, I can write the word and. X is less than or equal to 2. Now this is what it means. This and this mean the same thing. You'll never see it written this way, but this is what it means. This is the way you will always see it written. That's the way I want you to solve these inequalities. So over here on the graph, x is greater than or equal to -4, and x is less than or equal to 2. So it has to be somewhere between those two numbers. And notice how this looks like the graph. You have -4 on the left, 2 on the right. Everything in between is a solution. So down here with the or, and you can remember the graph because or sounds like the oars of a boat, which go out in opposite directions from the boat. So ands, you connect the dots. Ors, you draw them in opposite directions. X is less than 4, or x is greater than 12. Notice down here, only one of the inequalities has to be satisfied. A number like 3 is less than 4, but it's not greater than 12. But it doesn't matter. It only has to meet one of the inequalities. So for the solution here, you actually write the word or. So this is the way I want you to write your or inequality solutions. Okay, compound inequalities, ands and ors. All right, let's do a few examples. Let's start with number 1. Now this is an easy one. You've done this kind before. First of all, I'm going to subtract x from both sides. I'm going to solve and graph this. So I get -4x plus 8 is greater than or equal to -4. Now I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. Okay. So I get -4x is greater than or equal to -12. Now I solved this exactly the same way I'd have solved it if I would have had an equal sign there instead of an inequality sign. And really, you do solve it the same way, only there's one thing you have to remember. If you divide or multiply by a negative, then you have to flip the sign. So in this case, I'm going to divide by -4 to get x by itself. So that means I have to flip the sign. So let me go up here with this. So I have x is less than or equal to -12 divided by -4 is +3. Notice how the sign has flipped because I divided by a negative. So this is the solution. Now let's draw the graph. So let's put it on a number line. I always like to put 0 as a reference point. There's 3. So I'm going to open my circle. Since it has an equal sign, I need to fill it in. And I'm going to highlight everything less than 3. So that goes this direction. So that's x is less than or equal to 3, and that's the graph. Okay, let's come down to number 2. For number 2, I have an or. This is a compound inequality, so I need to solve these separately. So I'm going to solve this inequality completely separate from this one. At the end, I'll bring them together. So I got to subtract 6. So I have 5x is less than 10. divide by 5, so x is less than 2. Now over here on this side, I want to subtract 2 from both sides. So I have x is greater than 6. Now I'm going to put them together. So my solution is x is less than 2 or x is greater than 6. So I just brought these two inequalities down, put the word or between them, and that's my solution. The graph will look like this. There's 0, 2, and 6. Since I have no equal signs under the inequalities, I'm going to put open circles at each. Since it's an or, I'm going to draw the arrows in opposite directions, like the oars of a boat. And there's my solution. Solution and graph. So that's an or inequality. Okay, last but not least, let's try the and. This is an and inequality. I'm going to solve it the same way I did the or, only at the end I'm going to do something different. I'm going to first start by dividing by 2. So I'm going to solve this separate than this. So I'm going to divide by 2. So I have x is greater than or equal to negative 3. Notice I didn't switch the sign. I didn't divide by a negative. This is negative, but that doesn't matter. If I'm dividing by a positive, I leave the sign the same. X is greater than or equal to negative 3. All right, over here, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So I have 2x is less than or equal to 10. Divide by 2, x is less than or equal to 5. All right, so now I want to write my inequality, write the solution. So here's what I'm going to do for an and. I'm going to put the variable in the middle. I'm going to always point my inequality signs to the left. In this case, I have equal to, so I'm going to put those underneath. Now, the reason I put them to the left is because it'll look right when I write the numbers in there. If they point to the left, I can take the smaller of the two numbers and put it on the left. Then I'll take the bigger of the two numbers and put it on the right. Now that looks right. It's in order. Negative 3 is less than 5. It reads in order. If I was to switch the signs, the negative 3 would be over here and the 5 would be here. It just wouldn't look right. So now it's easy to put this on a graph. There's negative 3, 0, and 5. I have equal signs, so I'm going to fill in the circles. And since it's an and, I'm going to highlight between the dots. So everything from negative 3 to 5 will work in this inequality. So solution and graph. And that's it for graphing inequalities. Thanks for listening.